Okay, let's move to our next presentation by Anuradha Pentareddy, who is the Vice President Consulting Global Delivery Center with Adobe. Anu comes with strong academics in computer science and 25 years industry experience in IT, which was the first 5 years primarily with US customer operation from US. Last 20 years have been around setting up global technology teams in India to support customers across globe. She has served in leadership role as the delivery practice head at Wipro, heading 10,000 people organization, and then worked as a vice president Value Labs, driving digital business, now with Adobe as VP for Global Delivery Center. Can we welcome Anuradha with big round of applause, please?
Thank you so much for a very warm welcome. Unlike my previous presenter, I just have one slide because I don't believe in too many slides. So I will try to make it as comprehensive and as possible. I thank UBS Forums for giving me this opportunity today. Like he mentioned that I head the Global Shared Services and Global Delivery Center for Adobe. This is a large organization in India trying to support multiple customers. Today I'm supposed to be speaking about data management and security, and this is a very, very vast topic. And I'm going to limit this to digital marketing, as a domain, because data and digital marketing is so very important, critical, so relevant to the current situation. So if you really look at last 2 years, I think everybody has spoken about this pandemic and impact it has had on our lives. I think that's where a lot of enterprises have tried to accelerate their adoption for digital marketing and digitization and digitalization of their enterprises, right? Which means that many of their offline processes were actually pushed to be more digital so that consumers are able to actually leverage technology for them to be able to use the products and services of enterprises. Now with digitalization actually picking up so much, it was so important for enterprises to understand the insights of customers, right? Many a times, I think while there are organizations in the finance and retail and in the healthcare and pharmaceuticals and all of the different domains, I think knowing your customers is very important, right? And data plays an important role in knowing the customers, and that's very critical for marketing your products and services. When you talk about data and knowing insights about customers, there are two big challenges which CIOs are facing today. CIOs and CMOs are facing today. One, I think the customers and the number of channels that they use today is so very many, right? You have web channels, you have mobile channels, you have your call center support, you have metaverse, which is a new world that is evolving, you have gaming consoles. So there are a lot of interactions and touch points which customers have. And how do we uniquely identify that this is the customer who has gone to all these 5 channels, and do you have insights about them? So that's the first big problem statement that enterprises are facing today in a big way. And the second thing is there are so many data sources that are there which provides information. How do we get all of them together, and how do we uniquely tie the data together? So there are different channels and there are different sources of information which is outside the enterprises, and these are two big channels. So data management as a concept is actually evolving right now, because there isn't a unique way to identify your customer at the moment. So identifying durable identifiers to be able to identify customers is so important. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with how the world is moving away into a cookie-less world, right? Today, I think if you look at any of the implementations which capture information and data, they're all based on cookies. But I think in the world where we don't have cookies, how are we even going to collect information or understand your customers? So you need to be able to identify those. So that's the first big area where your data management is actually evolving into, right? How do you operate in a cookie-less world? That's the first thing. The second thing is the personalization needs of customers is extremely high these days. It's called hyper-personalization. And to be able to do hyper-personalization, you should have a lot of insights about your customer. Without that, your customer profile has to be so enriching for you to derive those aspects. So that is the second thing which is going to drive your data management strategy as we look into the future. The third one is, I'm sure privacy and security, these are terms that are so very prevalent. If you look at even some of the social channels like Twitter and the others, the amount of personal information and how much of that can be restricted versus shared, right? That is becoming the crux and a big challenge for organizations to manage, right? So security and privacy is going to be the forefront for data management. And lastly, I think today, in many of the enterprises, you have multiple, marketing platforms, multiple systems to manage data. And there is a need for CIOs and CMOs to be able to get all of them together. So having a single, platform. And last but not least, what's the most important thing for any, any CEO of the organization or any CIO or CMO? It is cost, right? And having cost-effective solutions to data management is going to drive their decisions. And I think that's where shared services outsourcing models actually play a significant role. So with that as a context, I will just, this is a very busy slide, not that I'm going to go through everything that's there on this slide. With data as a center, there are 6 different aspects of data management, right? The first one is data collection itself. And like I mentioned earlier, I think data collection is about how do we get the right data and right customer insights into your enterprise. So that's the first part. So a lot of the foundation of a data management platform depends upon the quality of how you are collecting the information, right? The quality and cleanliness of the data is going to be the most important thing. The other thing that is important is the ingestion strategies, ingestion and transformation of information. And this is where I think today when we talk about shared services and operating from different centers, the outsourcing and the data sources that you have from third-party systems are located in different kinds of systems in different regions and different countries. How do we pull all of that together? What kind of ingestion strategies do you have? And I'm representing Adobe here, and we have an excellent platform and our connectors and ingestion, products which will help you to bring all of that data together seamlessly, which can be controlled in a centralized manner. As much as we are, capturing information, the most important thing is how much do you capture and how much do you filter, right? Because if you look at every enterprise has phenomenal data. It runs into, multiple terabytes of, information that gets computed and added to your existing repository. So it's very important to have data exclusion strategies, which will help you to limit or filter the information that is not required, take the information that is really required by your organization for you to make effective digital strategies. So the first one obviously is the data collection. Then the second one is the governance of this data. So once you are having this data that is there, which is very important, which is captured by your enterprises, you're getting third-party data to be able to get this together. It's also important to understand how do you govern this information and content and data that you have within the organization, right? And this is where I think what level of controls do you have, how much of governance is happening on this data at what level, what is your data infrastructure strategy, how is data actually stored, how is data actually modeled, what level of data is given access to what kind of people. All of those aspects come into your data governance, and this is a huge thing. And because data is evolving so much, you cannot really have that, once I have this data, I'm done, I don't have to have governance, right? Because data is flowing in every day. You need to have controls, you need to have alerts, you need to have automation mechanisms for you to understand, okay, there are instances right now where your controls or your data is going a little out of control. Maybe you've started compiling a lot of customer PII information, right? And we have seen enterprises which accidentally capture customers' personal information, and if those alerts are not set in place, they will also get into huge legal issues in a big way, right? So how do we have right data masking strategy, right encryption strategies, and also alerts in terms of flagging to the security teams that there is information coming into your system, be alert, ensure that it's all cleaned up, it's all kept, or you have proper information security mechanism which is given to all the key people who are monitoring that data. So that is the second part, which is again very important, which also governs that the quality of your data that is there, it continues to be at the same level of quality, and not get into a state where you have to actually spend a lot of time in terms of cleansing of information. I'll touch upon data security as the other important aspect, and this is where most of our what we have done for our customers actually has been helping us, right? The first part is obviously the data masking and encryption. And I'll give you examples. I heard HDFC is there as one of, they are one of our customers. We have Reliance Jio as another customer from India. Similarly, we have, Coke, and we have the state of Illinois, state of Oklahoma. These are all, government, agencies and federal customers in the US. Now, for them, they are all capturing data about their citizens, for example, in the US, right? You have, citizen information that is captured. This is to understand what is a citizen's behavior in a specific state within the US. Now, when we are capturing or having the data about these, customers, I think the encryption and masking, what kind of information can we actually store? To what level? Should it be masked? Should it be encrypted? Can I store it in my data repository? So there is a huge focus that we will have to bring in terms of doing that due diligence before even we start capturing information from various channels into our data repository. For example, Reliance Jio had a unique requirement that they didn't want to have their data outside of India. Everything about their customers should be, because of the rules. Many of these customers don't even want the data to be there in the cloud services. For shared services, what's very important is that you have critical data and all of that in your cloud environment so that it is accessible by everyone, right? And that is where we have a very big challenge in terms of convincing customers to adopt shared services as a model for us to be able to manage the data. And this is still evolving. So we are at a juncture where there is data, there is data and content which is not very private, which is not very core to the organizations. Those are the first that are targeted for moving into a shared services setup. Then comes the ones which are probably hybrid, not too critical, and yet you can allow the shared services to operate on the data by using a little bit of masking and encryption. And the third part of data is something which is so very core that you can never, this is completely owned by the enterprises. So when we talk about the data security, there is storing and the sharing policies that are there. There are access controls that you also provide. So the way you model your data is at the lowest level, you actually have role-based access. So if there are people, if there is content which is there accessible to everybody, then everybody gets access to that data. Then the second level is there is only restricted users who can access. So you have to define your data labels for you to be able to give or enable that kind of control to the data that is getting captured. That is what is governed by the dual principles. This is something that is applied to most of the data that is captured within your systems. Now, while we talked about collection, governance, and security, the fourth important aspect of data management is the global rollouts. So you take about any customer today, whether it's to do with Coke, which is having different countries and different brands and located everywhere. Each of them will have to cater to different regions. They have to cater to different countries, different languages, and the rules and regulations that are there in each of these countries is very, very different, right? So when you're talking about shared services within the organization to support global rollout, you need to have first of all, you need to have a infra provisioning strategy which tells you to capture my EMEA customer data, let's say for Coke, right? Where should my data center be? How do I manage and store data in that particular region? Similarly, if I look at APAC as a region, APAC, certain countries are okay to have their data stored in countries like Singapore. So you can have data centers located in Singapore where all the customers' information can be stored there. So when I talk about the infra architecture for data storage, this is a very huge concept, and this actually, if not done well, can lead into a lot of legal issues that the enterprises can face, right? And hence, I think this is the first step in terms of ensuring that when you have global brands, when you have, global customers, you need to have a lot of thinking and, focus on this particular area. The other thing is about, what was that bell about? 5 more minutes, okay. The other thing is the data model itself, right? When you're having a data model, it has to be extensible, it has to be open, so that you are able to add more fields, more attributes, and include lot more regions, lot more languages, lot more controls, and things like that, right? So having your data management for supporting global rollouts and global brands like Samsung and Coke, I think these are some of the artifacts that you have to consider. The next one is integration, like I mentioned. The data sources these days for getting customer insights is so huge. So you need to have a lot of automation done for you to be able to pull information from multiple different data sources so that you can get all of them together. There are some things which Adobe actually provides right now, but there are also a lot of connectors that you will need to have to SFDC, to Microsoft, to any of the CRM systems, or also external data sources for us to be able to pull that information. Last but not the least is data performance, right? It's not as much about getting all information and data together. It runs into trillions of records and terabytes of information. But to process this information and get insights very, very quickly is also very critical, right? And to be able to do that, you need to know how to partition your data. You need to know how to label your data. You should have a proper taxonomy definition. You should also have very good query services and mechanisms for us to pull all of this information and then give that insights, because that is what your digital marketing CMOs would actually use to retarget. For you to be able to go and retarget your customers, you should get this at speed, real time, understand what your customer wants, and then you actually publish the relevant offers or new discounts, new products that you're releasing, just to attract and acquire new customers. So that's the crux. And shared services context for data management is still, I would say, very nascent, because there is so much of resistance from customers in terms of moving off or giving control to the data. But like I said, I think we have this three-pronged approach where there is data which doesn't have too much of privacy policies. So that is the first thing that you can actually move into shared services. Then you have hybrid, and then last one is more private, where I think a lot of data masking, security, and all of those controls have to be brought in. So with that, if there are any questions, I can take. Yes. Yes. All of them, right? I think, yes, yes, it falls under that. Not
separate section, or will be a same section of it?
It is part of data security and the global rollout. Because GDPR, for example, EMEA has a lot more stringent GDPR rules compared to the others, right? So for example, right, all of you would have seen a lot of these marketing emails and campaigns that get launched. But if I, as a customer, I am not giving you the consent to use my information, and accidentally I end up getting an email targeting, saying that you like this and this is what we are offering, that can become a huge issue. So there is so much of governance that we have to bring in terms of what emails can be sent, how much of customer information can be even utilized, right, for you to be able to target and do the marketing.
So GDPR, PDP, all these things are still evolving, right?
Yes.
So how are you continuing to?
It is so for example, in our AEP is our core platform in Adobe. It's called Adobe Experience Platform, and it is that has got lot of rules for us to be able to. But otherwise also, for every country and every region, right, the security policies has to be understood properly. And then when you're designing your data model and the security rules, right, it should be based on that, so that all of these are plugged into the application. Data by itself will not be there. How you capture, all those controls have to be on top of the data that you collect. There's a question.
Ma'am, you mentioned something about data masking.
Yes.
For the third category, which is
Yes.
the more private ones.
Yeah.
What's been your experience? And I'll tell you the context in which I'm asking this question. A lot of our data is also shared when we work with partners. They could be consultants or whatever, customers or anybody. So what's been your experience in data masking, are the tools effective? Can you do things on the fly, depending on what has to be shared?
Yeah. So I think, you know, anything, doing things on the fly will bring in a lot of processing, you know, time, right? So I think there is a give and take in terms of, you know, how much of real-time processing do you want to actually accommodate, so because it shouldn't impact your performance. But a simple example is, you know, credit card information, right? When you're talking about credit card, you cannot store the credit card numbers of customers as is in your system. You will be masking significant part of your number and maybe only store what is required, right? So that is one example. So when you talk about masking, there are certain attributes which are related to your customer, which I think you cannot store them as is. So you need to have a mechanism for you to either mask or encrypt and store that information. Because like you said, when you have data repository, you have administrators and a lot of people using it, querying it. At no point you need to, you know, expose the customer information, you know, to the people who are consuming it. So it should be in a transformed manner or masked manner, and it works. And do we have it completely under control? I don't. I think even now, see, simple things like when you are troubleshooting your application, logging something in a log file, right? Typically you will have logs where a lot of customer activities get logged. The log file also should not have any references to the customer PII information. Accidentally, if you're entering name, your date of birth, everything on the form, typically developers for troubleshooting, they would log most of the saying that this customer has come, use this form, it's getting logged in the log file. Even that has to be masked and entered so that that information is not visible to anybody who's actually looking at the log files. So a lot of things, it's like a huge, see, each of this bubble is like a, you know, big topic itself.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
And still you people have questions, please get
Yeah,
hold of
sure.
ma'am during the tea break that we'll have
Thank
now.
you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.